regarded as nothing but an effort on the part of Carol Reece to gain a little prominence, and so I'll do everything I can to see that it fails. Well, I am kind of a strange personality in the sense that a challenge of that nature interests me. Our counsel withdrew. He went over and sat on the couch on Mr. Reece's office and pouted. But I sort of took up this statement of Hayes as a challenge and set myself the goal of winning him over to our point of view. And I started by noticing on his desk that there was a book, and the book was of the type that there are many these days that would be complaining about the spread of communism in Hungary, or that type of book. And this meant to me that at least Hayes read a book. And so I brought up the subject of the spread of the influence of the Soviet world, and for 2 hours discussed this with Hayes, and finally ended up with his rising from his desk and saying, "Norm, if you will carry this investigation toward the goal as you've outlined it to me, I'll be your biggest supporter." I said, "Mr. Hayes, I can assure you that I will not double-cross you." Subsequently, Mr. Hayes sent word to me that he was in the Bethesda hospital with an attack of ulcers, but would I come and see him, which I did. He then said, "Norm, the only reason I've asked you to come out here is I just want to hear you say again, you will not double-cross me." I gave him that assurance, and that was the basis of our relationship. Meantime, counsel took the attitude expressed in these words: "Norm, if you want to waste your time with this guy," as he called him, "you can go ahead and do it, but don't ever ask me to say anything to him under any condition on any subject." So, in a sense, that cleared the decks for me to operate in relation to Hayes on my own. And as time passed, Hayes offered friendship, which I hesitated to accept because of his vulgarity. And I didn't want to get mixed up with him socially under any condition. Well, that was our relationship for about 3 months, and then eventually I had occasion to add to my staff, and as a result of adding to my staff a top-flight intelligence officer, both the Republican National Committee and the White House were resorted to stop me from continuing this investigation in the direction Carol Reece had personally asked me to do, which was to utilize this investigation, Mr. Griffin, to uncover the fact that this country had been the victim of a conspiracy. That was Mr. Reece's conviction. I eventually agreed to carry it out. I explained to Mr. Reece that his own counsel wouldn't go in that direction. He gave me permission to disregard our own counsel. And I had then to set up an aspect of the investigation outside of our office, more or less secret. And the Republican National Committee got wind of what I was doing, and they did everything they could to stop me. They appealed to counsel to stop me, and finally they resorted to the White House.
Was their objection because of what you were doing, or because of the fact that you were doing it outside of the official auspices of the committee?
No, their objection was, as they put it, my devotion to what they call anti-Semitism. That was a cooked-up idea, but in other words, it wasn't true at all. But anyway, that's the way I expressed it. And
excuse me, why
and they made it stick.
Why did they do that? How could they say that?
Well, they could say it, Mr. Griffin, but they had to have something in the way of a rationalization of their decision to do everything they could to stop the completion of this investigation in the direction that it was moving, which would have been an exposure of this Carnegie Endowment story and the Ford Foundation and the Guggenheim and the Rockefeller Foundation, all working in harmony toward the control of education in the United States. Well, in any event, to secure the help of the White House in the picture, they assigned, they got the White House to cause the liaison personality between the White House and the Hill, a major person, to go up to Hayes and try to get him to, as it were, actively oppose what investigation was engaged in. And Hayes very kindly then would listen to this visit from Major Person. Then he would call me and say, Norm, come up to my office. I have a good deal to tell you. I would go up. He'd tell me, I've just had a visit from Major Person, and he wants me to break up this investigation. So I then say, well, Wayne, what did you do? What did you say to him? He said, I just told him to get the hell out. And he did that 3 times, and I got pretty proud of him in the sense that he was, as it were, backing me up. And we finally embarked upon hearings at Hayes' request, because he wanted to get them out of the way before he went abroad in the summer. And
but why were the hearings finally terminated? What happened to the committee?
What happened to the committee or the hearings?
The hearings. The hearings.
Oh, the hearings were terminated. Carol Reece was up against such a furor as Hayes, through the activity of our own counsel. Hayes became convinced that he was being double-crossed, and he put on a show in a public hearing room, Mr. Griffin, that was an absolute disgrace. And he called Carol Reece publicly every name in the book, and Mr. Reece took this as proof that he couldn't continue the hearings. He actually invited me to accompany him when he went down to Hayes' office, and in my presence, with the tears rolling down his face, Hayes apologized to Carol Reece for what he'd done and his conduct, and apologized to me. And I thought that would be enough and Carol would resume. But he never did.
The charge of anti-Semitism is kind of intriguing to me. What was the basis of that charge? Was there any basis for it at all?
No, the basis that the Republican National Committee used was that the intelligence officer I'd taken on my staff, when I oriented this investigation to the exposure of and proof of a conspiracy, was known to have a book, and the book was deemed to be anti-Semitic. This was childish, but this was the second in command of the Republican National Committee, and he tried me, and I would have to dismiss this person from my staff.
Who was that person, sir? Who was that person?
The person?
Yes.
A Colonel Lee Lorraine.
Lee Lorraine.
Yeah.
And what was his book, do you recall? The title of his book?
The book they referred to was